Welcome to Stacking Stones and Adventures with Gnomes, episode 265 of the Tabletop Bellhop Gaming Podcast.
Tonight, we talk about the games that have been hitting our table lately. This includes lots of Qawale, an RPG party game, getting some use out of my new Targi Geek Up Bits, a return to Mars, and first thoughts on Gnome Hollow. We then have two detailed reviews for you, including a deeper look at Qawale and Cadaver, a creepy set collection game from Kedric Winks.
Before that, some introductions. I'm Sean, and with me is Deanna T.
Hey there to all my fellow cardboard connoisseurs.
And her husband, Mo.
I am Mo Tuzano, the Tabletop Bellhop, your cardboard concierge, helping you make your game nights better.
We record our podcasts live Wednesday nights at 8 p.m. Eastern at twitch.tv/tabletopbellhop, and we love it when people take part and join us in the lobby, our chat room here on Twitch. Though, do note we are taking some time off here and there, so we aren't always here every Wednesday night.
This episode exists in part thanks to our Patreon patrons and our awesome sponsor, Grand Gamers Guild.
You can find detailed show notes for this episode at tabletopbellhop.com/episode 265. That's 265. Links in our show notes may be affiliate links, which cost you nothing to use but help support this show.
Since we had so much to talk about on our last Bellhop's Tabletop segment, we decided to cut things off and save everything we've played from the start of the new year until now for today.
Which, trust me, is not going to be nearly as long as trying to cover 2 months worth of holiday gaming. So this is not going to be the long haul that you got 2 weeks ago. So starting off, there was some more Adventure Party with the kids. This is the role-playing party game from Smirk and Dagger Games. And then a bunch of plays of my copy of the game because my oldest daughter, Gwen, brought it to school, where it was a huge hit at her board game club. The fans of Kiss the Goblin kind of thought this was the next best step. Like, this is awesome. This is Kiss the Goblin with more detail. She also had it at Tartan Fest, which is a pop culture convention she was part of. Now, my youngest daughter, Eve, still swears this is her favorite game of all time. And it's lasted so far like more than a month. So I think this one might hold on because she's a little fickle with her top game lists. So it completely replaced Dubious for her, which is another game that was about making up a character and answering questions improv. So there's definitely a lot of overlap between these two games. Now, if you do want to hear about Adventure Party, check out our last episode for a full detailed review because we are loving this improv fantasy role-playing party game.
Yeah, if we let our youngest kid pick a game, this is the one she's going to ask for every time. And I don't even think you're aware of how many times she has requested it because I've been like, we're at my mom's. We didn't bring it. It's not here tonight. You're not playing Adventure Party.
Has she played, but wait, there's more? Like, is she into the improv or is it specifically the character creation aspect that she's really vibing to?
I don't know. We'll have to run the pitch game by her and see how she takes to it. But I think it's a D&D trappings. But
yeah,
could very well be.
That's my thought.
Interesting to know.
We have not. We have not tried. But wait, there's more with either of the kids. I think they'd like it because they both seem to enjoy the improv style games. They seem to like being put on the spot, unlike some other people. Next up was an afternoon with just Gwen and I. Deanna was off with Eve up in Toronto, actually. So I spent the day with the older kid while Gwen D spent the day with the younger kid. And I will admit most of the day, many hours were spent playing Borderlands 3. But before we sat down in front of the TV, we did play a couple of rounds of Star Realms, which is still as good as I remember it being. It's one of those games where I return back to it every few months and then go, I should just keep playing this always. Why do we put it away? Now, I will admit those were fully digital because we were somewhere waiting for food to show up and it was taking longer than we expected. And I was like, I've got Star Realms on my phone. And I don't know if Gwen takes after me more than her mom, but man, she remembered how to play right away. Like, she was good to go. So that was pretty awesome. But then after that, I had her teach me a game she owns, and that is Qawale. Now, Qawale was really solid, but I'll talk about that in a bit.
Yeah, you handed me Star Realms the other day when we were out. We didn't even end up playing. It was an aborted game. But the problem I wasn't having, I remember how to play Star Realms. I was having a problem with the app because I was like, I don't remember how to play this app. And yeah, so that's a different thing entirely. But I didn't know you guys played that the other day. That game is so good. And it's the pocket adaptation. It's like the digital adaptation is such a nice thing to have on hand all the time.
Yes.
Yeah, I did a day trip with the other kid, and we brought along a game to play on the train, but she was too tired out, so we never actually got to it. But what we brought was this neat Pokemon rethemed Korean version of Point Salad that we had given to Eve as a Christmas gift. And Mo picked this up from someone that had traveled overseas and brought it back. And we took it out just to set it up into a smaller container to bring on this trip, and looked at it and went, I don't read Korean. This could be a problem. Because Jen's like, I don't think you need to read to play this game. And I'm like, no, probably not. And then I started looking at it and went, no, we're going to have to figure some of this out, because there are cards where there are no pictures, just words on there. And I clearly couldn't read it, but we were able to find something on BGG pretty quick that we could print out that I could just fold up and put with the game. So it was a quick solution, but a brief moment of panic where I was like, I may have given the child an unplayable game.
So the thing is, like, when you think of Point Salad, you just think, well, it's number of points for the various veggies, right? What do you have to read?
There's more words in there than you realize.
Yeah, that you forget that there's most of veggies, or whoever has the most types of veggies, or whoever has the least tomatoes. So that made things, that's where the translations had to come in. What's interesting we learned while looking that up on Board Game Geek is that this version, which is often called the evolution version of Point Salad, because it's the EV Pokemon and all its different evolutions, is that there's actually a rule change. So it is not quite just Point Salad, that there is a wild card. The generic EV is a wild that can be used in any set. So it was interesting to learn there was a difference there.
Yeah, I'm curious to try it out. And it's not just, I mean, you have to decide what it is when you play it. Yeah. So it's not like it's totally wild and you can then retcon it at the end of the game to be whatever you want for points. Yeah, well, when I actually get it to the table, we'll see how that plays out.
Now, the other game we did play were many, many games of Qawale. So this was a game that Deanna actually gave Gwen as a gift, speaking of train rides, for their train ride out to Nova Scotia. Now, Gwen taught me the game and then utterly, completely, totally destroyed me at it. She had it with her for a month in Nova Scotia, and she said, yeah, we played a lot. So I don't know how many games. She doesn't have board game stats either. She doesn't know how many games she played, but she's like, yeah, I played that a lot. It did take me a bit to pick up on the strategy. I did manage to win 2 games out of like 20. So now, for those who don't know the game, this is a quick 2-player only abstract strategy game from Hachette Games, the Gigamic, that whatever sub brand of Hachette that uses kind of like a Mancala mechanic where you're picking up stacks of stones and dropping them, one going to adjacent spots. You get a 4x4 grid and you're trying to get 4 of your stones in a row. And it is just a really neat game that is just kind of what you expect. Like you just look at it and you're like, yeah, that's a beautiful Hachette Gigamic wooden game that's abstract strategy that's going to have more to it than it looks like. And sure enough, that's what it was. Now, for a full rules overview, tune in to our review later in the show.
Yeah, Gwen had brought it to Nova Scotia for her French immersion thingy that she was doing over the summer, where they weren't allowed to speak English and she couldn't have games that had a bunch of English in it. So I had given her this as definitely language independent game, and she had played it a ton there. And then I went to pick her up and bring her home on the train, and we sat down on the train and I still beat her, and she was so bummed out. She was like, I thought I had you for sure. I've been playing this so much over the last 5 weeks. And then it's funny because you and I played and I couldn't win. I couldn't even.
Next up was Sandbag. Again, we are still playing this Trick Taker from Brazier Games. We talked about this in the past. It's a game about the hot air balloons where you don't want to take tricks. And there's some neat chump mechanics where they can change and you can play cards that are in front of players. There's a tableau thing going on. Very fascinating game. This is the first time we played with 5 players. Now, when you do play with 5 players, you swap up the -5 rocket cards for -7 rocket cards, which I guess makes sense because now when you do take a trick, if you have a rocket, it's less. Because if you're playing with 6 people, you'd still be losing 1 point even with a -5 rocket, right? So that makes sense that they put it up to 7. And honestly, that I didn't feel that made any impact on the game. It still felt the same. But man, adding that one other player took so many cards out of the deck. Like your hand size was significantly smaller. And I don't remember the numbers. I think it's 11 instead of 15. So 4 less cards. That's 4 less hands. And with that, it just felt so much more cutthroat. So much more cutthroat and just felt tighter at 5. And it just felt more nasty. Like you were doing more mean moves. With smaller hands, it was easier to void yourself out of one or more suits. And that made for some surprising moments, like the first round of the game, like a 1 taking a trick and being like, what the heck? I played a 1. Like it's the second lowest card in the entire game. No one thinks should be able to beat a 1. What do you mean no one else at the table has this suit except for me? It was a good time, but I think it's going to be one of those games where some groups are going to like it better with the bigger count and the smaller hand and the tighter. And then some other groups I think are going to rather stick with 4 or less.
4 or less is definitely a different feel. It's a competitive game at any count. It's where you have to pay attention to what folks are doing. But personally, I felt like I had more options with the bigger hand size while playing at lower player counts. And I think that I enjoyed it better at the lower player counts because of that. It almost felt a little more random once you had less cards in your hand. It felt like you had, well, I got to roll with what I got and I have less options, right?
Now, in an effort to play more games we already know and enjoy, we did get Terraforming Mars Ares Expedition to the table. That went pretty well, but AP proved to be a problem and the game went very long. And we were doing it on a Sunday with the kids having school the next morning. So we ended up having to cut the game short. And sometimes I forget how heavy all of the Terraforming Mars games are because of the amount of information on each card. I played the game enough that I can pretty quickly look at a card, get an idea if it's something I might want or not. And then only if I think it's going to be useful for my strategy, do the detailed reading line by line to see exactly what it does. And I forget that some players don't have that experience, right? And they have to read every card. And it was particularly bad because the person who had to read every card specialized in research actions and got lots of extra cards whenever they took a research action. Now, I think we all had a good time, but I just have to remember that even though Ares Expedition is the short, quicker version of Terraforming Mars, that doesn't make it short and quick.
Ares Expedition really leans into people having already played Terraforming Mars and understanding the mechanics of Terraforming Mars. Like it even gives you an abridged, here's how to teach and play the game if you've played Terraforming Mars rule sheet, right? So I think the fact that my mom has not played Terraforming Mars or has only played it once or twice, that had an effect on it as well. Like people that know the game would pick these things up a little quicker. The fact that you're just going to throw some of those cards out. You don't have to stop and think about them for that long. I hated that we had to cut this one short because it was such a fun game and I had some cool things going on. I just, like, win or lose, I wanted to bring it to the end, and so it killed me to have to cut it short. I can't wait to get a chance to play it again. It's just super fun game.
Yeah,
probably should have just left it set up at your mom's and went back and finished the game another time. But at the time, I didn't even consider that. So
yeah, it's been 4 or more years since I've played Terraforming Mars. I would probably be there with Brenda, not remembering what the heck.
Yeah, this is another. We need the new get Sean to play the games list. I am going to bring this one on Saturday, so maybe we can get it in a game Saturday. Next, Deanna and I actually took our first night off and had a date night, first one since October. So that was nice and relaxing. That involves some surprisingly good burgers. There's an interesting thing going on in Windsor right now. You might want to look into if your local called the Burger Battle. We tried some craft beer and we played our favorite bar game, Targi. Now, the important thing here is I showed them off on the live stream. I don't remember if we mentioned it on the actual podcast, but I know the people who join us live on Twitch got to hear about and see them. Is for Christmas, Deanna got me the Geek Up upgrade. So like the high-end board game geek inspired or owned upgrades for Targi, and we got to use them. I love all the metal bits. The metal bits are fantastic. The metal first player token is just like super chunky and feels important. Like, I don't know, it's just like, I'm first player. Look at this thing, this bling. The scoring tokens are really nice. And Deanna made a point that I thought was cute. She's like, no, because usually she doesn't do very well in the game. And she's like, no, those metal, I want them. I want to collect them. I need to do actions where I get more of those. And then, of course, the metal coins are, well, metal coins, and metal coins are always awesome. And in this case, I don't know, they were chunky and had a heft to them I really enjoyed. Now, the other thing the game comes with is the replacement resource chips, which are plastic. And I don't know, they were fine. Like, they were fine. They really weren't much better than cardboard ones. Like, I almost wish they sold those two separately, because I would recommend people go get the metal upgrade kit for Targi, and the other one's up to you. As for a game, it's still one of the best 2-player only games I played. And next up, it's over my shoulder here. I don't think it's up quite on camera. We do have the expansion. Cosmos was like, you like Targi so much, check this out. So hoping to get to that fairly soon.
I wish I could take credit for giving you that, but it was actually a gift from your mom.
Oh, that was my mom. Okay, yeah. Sorry.
I think that might have been the first time I've won against you. So apparently I just needed that incentive of metal pieces. Yeah. I mean, the game doesn't need upgrades. It's just fine as it is. But how can you argue with shiny metal bits? You have to collect the shiny metal bits.
We have now established that D is a dragon.
Yes. And now I'm going to show off something else. This is a birthday gift I got. Is a new upgrade for Targi. We have Levity Games. Our friend Amon Anderson creates these, sells these on his Etsy shop. We are going to upgrade our meeples in Targi. So that is going to be the next upgrade for our Targi game. So thank you, Dana, for that. That was a birthday gift.
I don't know how well they showed up on camera, but they are quite cool. Go check out Levity Games on Etsy. They have his artwork is pretty, and he makes lots of cool stickers.
Yes. Follow the link in our show notes, though, because we are an Etsy affiliate.
Oh, there you go.
All right. Well, enjoying cookies and beer. I know, odd choice. We played a bunch of rounds of Qawale. And what's funny about this is, like what Deanna noted, is that Gwen warned me. He's like, oh, you're playing Mom? Don't worry, you won't beat Deanna. There's no way you're going to beat Mom. It's like, yeah, I beat you 18 out of 20 times, but Mom's going to destroy you. And I don't know, I think we had the rock, paper, scissors thing going on, which we also have in our family with Qawale, where there's, like Eve can beat all of us for some reason in Qawale, but then Gwen beats Mom, Mom beats me, I can beat Gwen. And I think that's what's happening with Qawale, because somehow I won every game of Qawale against Deanna.
Yeah, I don't even know. Like, there were beers involved, but not that many. It's like I completely forgot how to play. Like, not only did, as I was explaining to Gwen, not only did Dad consistently beat me, every time I was like, oh, surprise and shocked that I am beat. I wasn't sitting there going, okay, there's a move there, but he might make it. I'm going to take a chance. I was like, oh, crap, again? Oh, where'd that come from? Like, every time. And I'm like, wow, I was embarrassingly beaten down consistently and quickly.
Yeah, that felt like some of our Duke games. I don't know. Some other night, we'll try it at a coffee shop instead of a bar, and maybe things will go differently. All right. I said we'd be shorter than last week. The next game and last one that hit the table for us since we last recorded is the fantastic Gnome Hollow, which also ties to this because that was designed by Amon Anderson and artwork by Amon. And honestly, he is one of the nicest people I've ever met in the gaming industry, very genuine. Now, as for this game, it's a mix of tile placement and worker placement where you're placing hexagonal tiles trying to make mushroom rings. And each completed ring gives you a mushroom tokens that are a resource in the game, or a currency in the game, and as well as unlocking points and special in-game actions. Now, you can sell your markets at sell your mushrooms at a market for points. New actions unlock as the game progresses, including collecting wildflowers. And you're going to get points at the end of the game for the number of wildflowers you collect and the number of different sizes of mushroom rings or the number of mushroom rings you've formed. It's a beautiful game, pretty easy to teach with amazing looking components. So we got a demo of this at Gamma Expo last year and during the media preview event. And at the time, I predicted it's going to be a Spiel winner. Having now played the game at home, I'm still feeling pretty confident about that. I just don't know if it would win Spiel or Kenner Spiel because it's real borderline, that family weight, potentially heavy, especially because the game comes with advanced modes where you can trade. There's a market where you can trade in mushrooms for other mushrooms. And there's a second side of the board where your mushroom rings aren't just like you made a 5, you made a 6. They have to fit specific patterns.
It's designed to scale, but even at the base easy version of the game, I'd say it's a heavier family weight game. So, I don't know. I think more of a Spiel than a Kenner Spiel personally, but I had a chance to play a demo round of this, and I had pretty much already decided that I loved it. What was nice was, of course, that was with a prototype copy, so it was cool getting to see like the finished components, like the magnetic boards instead of inset boards. It just looks like a piece of cardboard, but it is somehow magically magnetic, and they have little tiny magnets in your little point counters that keep everything in place pretty well. We managed to knock into it once or twice because we have sleeves and are goofy reaching across the table, but it's still better than random wooden bits everywhere. And I love the scoring track, just the scoring mechanic, how it works, where you are moving flower pots. You're collecting flower pots and putting them up here, and that gives you points here. But you're also removing tokens here that gives you points, and your score is, kind of the two added up. It's a neat way of tracking it. That's very visual, very easy to see across the table what other people are doing and have an idea of where you are standing. And it in a game that could be math heavy, it takes all the mathiness out of it and makes it more family weight, because you don't have to be able to do the math of knowing, okay, so I've got 24 points in flowers, but 18 in mushroom rings, so that means I'm here. You can just kind of look at it and gauge very quickly where you're sitting in the game. So I thought it was super clever in that aspect.
Interestingly, though, the German version has not yet been released, so we'll have to wait on figuring out whether or not it's going to be a Spiel or a Kenner Spiel winner.
Oh, so it's going to be a 2025 potentially. Probably we won't hear till 2026. Wonder if it'll be an Origins Award winner. Nominations are open. Maybe I should go nominate it.
It's nominated right now for something, isn't it? Like Toy of the Year award?
I think it's already won a couple things. It is. The game has kind of exploded since it came out. So
nothing listed on their Board Game Geek page yet.
Well, the stickers I bought you that Amon made came with a little flyer that said I have been nominated for, and I think it was Toy of the Year award, and was encouraging people to go vote for it. I had given it to you with the papers.
Yes, Gnome Hollow is up for Game of the Year from the Toy something finalists. The Toddy TOTY
Toy
awards.
of the Year.
Yeah, Toy of the Year awards. So there is a thing here, which was interesting because that came with the stickers.
So is Flip 7, actually.
That doesn't surprise me. Flip 7 has exploded. It may be the greatest card game of all time. I may not feel that way, but as far as popularity, oof.
It's so sold out. It is. Yep. So sold out. Now, as for Gnome Hollow, we did play twice. Deanna and I played a learning game that was a little rough, but it was at the end of that date night. So there were other factors there. And then we played a 4-player game at Brenda's. But of course, the Bellhop's first law was very much true, because the first play of any game will be extreme. And I missed a couple little rules, specifically about selling mushrooms that did have an impact on the overall scores and would have caused everyone to play very differently. The important rule, in case you miss it as well, is you can only sell 2 mushrooms with 1 market action, and it has to be 2 different sets of mushrooms. So you can only sell 2 sets, and they have to be different ones. So we did miss that up. And if I remember, there was something else minor, but I don't think it was as big a deal. We loved this when we played it at Gamma. We were excited to get it. We were kind of waiting for it. It's been a hit. I look forward to a couple more games before a full review. Really looking forward to trying the hard side of the boards, because we're still having trouble making rings just out of the shapes you're given, let alone trying to make specific ones. And I really do want to add in the trading rules. I want to be able to trade mushrooms when you go to a signpost. So I am looking forward to that too. I think my favorite thing about this game right now is just showing it to other people and seeing their reaction. Like, I knew the family was going to love this one. I knew my mom was going to love it. Gwen was going to love it. And, bang on. I can't wait to show it to Sean. I can't wait to bring it out to public play events. I like seeing other people go, oh, wow, this is so cool. I'm going to place these tiles. I'm going to make mushroom rings. It all makes sense. And it's, yeah.
That's it for our recent plays with more to come. Next episode should be lots to talk about because we've got a Brews and Board Games public play event at the Walkerville Brewery tomorrow. So anyone listening at home, it's already gone past. And then I'm having a birthday party on Saturday where I plan to play lots of games with friends and family. So there should be plenty of talk about next episode. And hopefully Sean will be at both those events. We can get him to sit down and play a game at least one of them.
Well, what have you been playing lately? Let us know in the comments. Share it in the What You've Been Playing section of our Discord, or email one of us at Mo or D or Sean at tabletopbellhop.com. And now, a message from our sponsor.
For the most part, the winter holidays are done, and it's time to start looking forward to a couple of fun start-of-the-year holidays, by which I mean Groundhog Day and then Valentine's Day.
Now, a great way to celebrate these yearly happenings is by playing a game. And there's no better series of holiday games than the Holiday Hijinks series from our sponsor, Grand Gamers Guild. These are low-priced, 18-card escape room-style games that are great to play with friends and family. And since they aren't too long, it's pretty easy to fit them in as part of any other celebrations you may be having.
First up, we have the Groundhog Gambit, which was our favorite Holiday Hijinks game out of the ones we've played so far. It makes brilliant use of the 18 cards in the game to present you multiple different puzzles using the same cards. And then there's the Cupid Crisis, where you are trying to save your Valentine's Day date night.
You can get both of these games either in print or in the much cheaper print and play format over at grandgamersguild.com. And don't forget, you can use our special code BELLHOP to get an extra 10% off on top of that.
There's nothing saying you can only play spooky horror games in October. Join us for a review of Cadaver, a set collection card game where you get to play a necromancer.
Cadaver comes from the twisted mind of Kedric Winks and is published by Cheatwell and Outset Media Games. And we've got to thank the Cheatwell team for giving us an awesome demo experience at Origins, as well as providing us with a signed review copy of this game. So thank you very much for that. Now, the creepy but not gory artwork comes from Augustinus Rajinskis.
Despite the somewhat dark theme of necromancers trying to assemble and reanimate corpses, Cadaver is actually a family-friendly card game for 2 to 6 players from about age 8 or so up. Games are nice and quick, only taking about half an hour at the full player count, which usually means that when the game comes to an end, you end up playing more than one round in a row.
Now, Cadaver comes in a small square box that also holds the cards during play. The insert is designed to look like a burial mound, and you will be drawing cards from the box, literally digging stuff up from the grave. You get 110 cards and a 2-sided fold-out set of rules, which are quite clear. We recommend leaving them out on the table for the first few games, as this card game has quite a few different card types.
So the goal in Cadaver is to collect sets of corpses, with sets of 3 of the same corpse being worth more than sets of 3 different corpses, and leftover corpses being worth even less. There's also a rare abomination, which you can summon, resurrect, rebuild, which is worth bonus points for the necromancer that gets it in play.
All of this reanimating is done by collecting and playing corpse cards, and then playing arcane resource cards on top of those cards, matching each corpse's 3 requirements, which are a mix of potions, scrolls, and brains. Players may also collect accomplices that are there to help them collect resources, ghouls used to steal other players' corpses, coffins to mess with other players, keys to unlock those coffins, and powerful amulets, which can be a wild resource or can be used to scare a ghoul away.
At the start of the game, everyone gets 5 cards and there's an initial resource market created. On a player's turn, they will lay 2 cards and then draw 2 cards to replace them, so they maintain a hand of 5. The game ends when the last card is drawn from the grave pile, and at that point everyone scores their sets of completed corpses.
Now, when you lay a corpse card, you just place it in front of you. It ends up becoming a tableau in front of you. Resources are laid on tops of the corpses, moving any completed corpses to the scoring pile and adding the resources that were used to complete that corpse to the market. When you lay down a ghoul, you can take anyone else's face-up corpse or assistant, and you get the resources that are on those cards.
Coffins, you lay down on top of someone else's card, either a corpse or an assistant, and then that card is locked away. It's basically out of play, and it can't be used, and no further resources can be played on it. That is, unless the owner has a key card to play on top of the coffin, which unlocks the card and causes both the key and the coffin to be discarded.
Amulets can be laid as any resource, counting as either one or two of that resource, or can be played when someone else plays a ghoul on you to scare them away. Finally, we have the assistants. At the end of your turn, when drawing back up to 5, you normally have to draw from the deck. But if you have an appropriate assistant, you can instead draw resources from the market. There is one assistant for each of the 3 resources, and a fourth, which lets you collect any of the 3.
Now, a final option is that a player can just discard a card instead of laying it. Discarded resources go into the market, everything else goes in a communal discard pile. At the end of a player's turn, they then draw back up to 5 cards, and then you have an option to trade with the other players. Now, you can only trade cards in your hand, none of the stuff that's on the tableau in front of you, and card trades don't have to be an even number of cards. You're off to trade anything in your hand, but after trading, you may have more than 5 cards in your hand or less than 5. Note, you don't draw up until the end of your next turn.
Once the last card has been drawn from the deck, then your evening of digging up corpses and mucking around the graveyard is over, but there's still a special dawn phase where each player gets one last turn. On that last turn, you can make any number of trades and then take any number of lay actions. After everyone finishes the final turn, players score their sets, and the player with the most points wins.
Cadaver is a pretty quick-to-learn game that plays very quickly once everyone knows the cards. Now, there is a bit of a learning curve here with how things like the coffins and amulets work, when you can play ghouls, and what you can steal with them. And this is why Sean suggests we leave the rulebook out. There's a particular page that you can leave it open to that shows all the different card types. Now, I admit, I would have liked a reference card. That would have been nice, but you know what? Leaving the rules open really isn't that bad.
It's like the opposite of a steep learning curve. There's just a few things you need to pick up, and then once you understand those, you're good to go.
And again, it's very thematic. You really are just digging up bodies and stuff from the graves and building them in front of you. It's once you understand what all those different extra little cards do, which maybe takes you one time through the game, you're good to go.
And the mechanics work well. There's a fun mix of pushing your luck and take that in this game. In most games, there's usually a point where you start getting a little frustrated because you're not getting any corpses, but that ends up being made up for when you get a bunch of ghouls and coffins and end up stealing the corpses you need from other players or just messing with other players' fans.
Yeah, messing with the other players is what makes this game fun. I do find overall, you don't tend to end up with turns where you're really stuck doing nothing. Like that happens every once in a blue moon, but you're not going to sit there draw after draw going, gosh, I'm just going to sit here and wait because I'm trying to collect a head for my cadaver or a brain for my cadaver.
And I will say one of the most often forgotten rules is the fact you can discard 2 cards just to be able to draw 2 new cards. That is always an option. And I got to say the theme is, it seems weird to talk about reanimating corpses as fun, but you know what? The theme's fun. It's you're necromancer, you're raising the dead. The artwork's creepy, but it's not grisly. Like for this theme, it could have been pretty gross. Like brains is one of the resources. Now, yeah, okay, the theme might be a bit pasted on, but there are some nice thematic tie-ins. Like honestly, the biggest one that I love is the fact of the box insert being that raised grave and you're digging in. Now, that does lead to one problem we do have is that cards like to get stuck at the very bottom, but you know what? That's such a minor thing. Other tie-ins are like the coffins and the keys. And I got to say, I really like the assistants, right? What person reanimating corpses doesn't need, a Igor with them as well? Mm-hmm. I do dig that tie-in.
Yeah, the art is not too detailed or gross. And despite the creepy theme, I think this is a really family-friendly game. I imagine that you could play this with younger kids because there's really no reading required. My only complaint, Mo's already mentioned it, the very cutely themed box that's designed as a grave to hold your draw pile. Cards get stuck in it every time. We were talking about placing a coin or something on there so there's a little pivot space so they don't get stuck at the bottom, and I actually think that's a good idea. Or you have to pull them out and put them on the table.
Now, if you are into sort of the fun, creepy games like Dead Man's Cabal, for instance, or La Familia Hort, other games we've reviewed on this channel, this one could really be right up your alley.
Yeah, I agree. And if you collect horror themed games in general, or, you've got a pile of Halloween season games that you break out once a year or maybe more often, you're going to want Cadaver in your collection. Like, this theme is perfect for those spooky game nights, or, when your goth friends come over.
Yeah, I agree. It is the perfect spooky season game.
Now, I also think it's just a good, solid, light card game. It's almost a party game. I would say it's a step above. Like, the score does matter. It's definitely competitive. There's not a lot of laughs in the game, unless you want to laugh at the person when you put a coffin on the corpse they're about to finish, and that all the keys are already gone out of the game. There might be some laughter then, a bit of maniacal laughter at that point. But I think this is a game you can enjoy year round. It's just fun. You don't have to be celebrating spookiness. It's just a good fit for a lighter beer and pretzels game night.
Yeah, I find when we break it out, we tend to play a couple games in a row, and then I'm kind of, at that point, I'm sick of it and I don't want to see it for a wee bit. That's why I think it's grand that it's seasonal, because you break this out once a year, I'm going to be really happy with it. If you break it out every weekend, I'm going to be finding reasons to not be at the table.
Though if you do break it out on Easter, some people might get offended.
Now, people who should avoid this game, of course, is anyone who doesn't want to play a game about raising corpses or collecting brains. If you're turned off by this theme or art, we get it. This is not going to be for everyone. Also, people who don't like take that games. If you do not like negative player interactions, if you don't like stab you in the back, screw your neighbor type of games, you're going to want to stay away from this one, because this game can get nasty. The ghouls and coffins are nasty cards, and players stealing corpses from each other is par for the course. This is a big part of the game, and there's no real way to play this one friendly. You know how you play Carcassonne with some people and we just won't steal each other's stuff. There's no safe mode, happy friendly Cadaver version here.
No, and you can't really play defensively either. It is what it is. You're locked in for some backstabbing. Okay, that's it for our look at Kedric Winks Cadaver. Be sure to check out our previous reviews of some other great games from this designer, like the One vs. Many hidden movement game Shadow Ninjas, or Psychobabble, a game of shared dreams and insanity.
We're always on the lookout for small footprint two-player games that are great to play at a coffee shop, pub, restaurant, or brewery. Qawale Mini is one such recent find, though it may not be the best for travel.
So this two-player only abstract strategy game was designed by Roman Frogger and Dieter Lennon Braggart. It's published by Gigamic, which is a division of Hachette Board Games. We bought our copy as a gift for our daughter Gwen from the Hachette booth at Origins Game Fair. Now, we picked up the Qawale miniature version, but the components and rules and the way the game plays is identical. So this review may as well apply to both versions of the game. We just happen to have the smaller version.
The components are a wooden board with a 4x4 grid of raised platforms on it, and then 3 sets of stones in 3 different colors, natural, burgundy, and gold. And while these look like flat pebbles, they're actually lacquered wood. There's also a bag to hold the stones if you don't feel like keeping the box, and a clear set of instructions with lots of examples.
Set up the game by placing out the board and each player choosing a color. You then take the stones for the third color and stack 2 of them in each corner of the board. The goal in Qawale is move the stones so that you end up with a string of 4 of your color at the end of your turn. This can be a row, column, or diagonal across the board.
So each turn, you're going to take one of your stones and put it on top of an existing stack that's on the board. Never a blank space, has to go where there's already stones. Then you're going to pick up the whole stack and redistribute them on the board one at a time, starting with the bottom of the stack up. Each stone placed has to go orthogonally from where you just started or the last stone placed, and you can't backtrack, so you can't go left, then right, or up, then back down. You can loop around.
That's it. That's all there is to it. You now know how to play Qawale. The game really is that simple.
Yeah, this is one of those simple to learn, difficult to master games. I know it's a cliche, but it's a cliche for a reason. It's just that style of game. The mechanics are kind of like Connect 4 or Tic-Tac-Toe mashed with Mancala, due to the way you drop the stones after picking them up. And I got to say, it takes a bit to wrap your head around how that actually plays out. Like, just us describing it, you don't see it. But then the first time you play the game, you're like, oh, okay, that's simple enough. And then you see your opponent make a move, and you're like, oh. And then you'd go to make it, and you're like, oh, wow, there's more here than I thought. Like, I think it took me 8 games before I came even close to winning against an experienced player, our previously mentioned daughter. But now I admit the more I play, the better I get, and the more strategies I'm seeing, and I'm getting way better at predicting what my opponent's going to do.
Yeah, on the surface, it's really simple and easy to understand what the basic rules are, but it takes a couple plays for it to click in and see how the pieces move and for it all to make sense strategically.
If you are interested in trying it out before buying, Board Game Arena does have it available.
That's awesome. I can see hammering through many, many games of it. That's what we need to do to be able to beat Gwen. Is we need to go and practice on Board Game Arena. And to be fair, this is a game that is inspired by a game played with sticks on a beach, or a travel game, or a camping game. It is a nice, high quality wooden version of something that, yes, you could just play with your own components. But I do have to say the version that Gigamic has put out is really nice looking. Like it's got that executive desk toy look. I don't know. It's just a certain style of wooden board game. Gigamic, that's their thing. Make these showcase games, right? The kind of stuff you have out on a coffee table that's part of your decor, as well as being a game there that's sitting there looking beautiful, begging your guests to play. They make the kind of games that, like, if I owned a coffee shop, yes, I would put out Connect 4 on a couple of the tables, because trust me, if you put out Connect 4 on a coffee shop table, people are going to play it. But I'd also be putting out a bunch of these like really high-end, nice-looking wooden games. And note, by saying nice-looking, high-end wooden games, these aren't overly expensive either. They're reasonably priced. Like, this game features all wood components. They're well-painted, well-lacquered. I think they're going to stand up to tons of play.
And we're talking about the mini version, but
Yes.
they didn't skimp on it. Aside from the fact that it is just shrunk down, it is as high quality as the full-sized version, which we don't own, but I've touched it. I've seen it at conventions. Well, they do look great. We did run into some problems with the mini version with stacking. So it's just that I bought this to play expressly on a train trip with the kid, because it's tiny, and they don't sell it as a travel game. They say Qawale Mini. It doesn't say travel on it. But to me, I saw this, went, that is a travel game. Okay. And the pieces look like flat stones, but they are wood, but very light. Like they feel like air. I've had cardboard components in my hand that feel heavier, denser than these things. There's no heft to them, and they don't want to stay stacked. If you are like, I can't imagine on an airplane with any turbulence, you'd have the same problem. The train's moving, they kind of bounce. Now, we never actually had to go fishing for a piece under someone else's chair, but we did have to make some crazy grabs, and it felt perilous while we were playing it. It's not bad when the stacks are low, but as the stacks get higher, the pieces are rounded on the edges and lacquered, and they just kind of slip. They're very light. There's nothing to hold them in place. I wanted them to have magnets in them. Yeah, but as a travel game, I will say it still fits as a travel game in that you can put it in your suitcase, and it's light and tiny and very, portable to bring along to have, but maybe not actually play on a train.
Yeah, because even just playing at our local coffee shops and pubs, we have had a problem with stuff getting unintentionally knocked over. But it's not a big problem, because this isn't a dexterity game. It's not meant to be a stacking game. And if something gets knocked over, you just restack it. And we've never gotten to the point where we couldn't remember the order of the stones or anything like that. Now, I also will note, though, that balancing and stacking, if you are playing this as a pub game, it does get harder as the night goes on.
Like I said, those pieces are rounded, and when you stack them, and once you get like 4 or 5 high, it's tipsy, especially if you're tipsy.
Now, games of Qawale are lightning quick. I can't see ever just sitting down and playing once. No, the more experience you get and the closer the two people playing are in skill, the longer the game gets as you try to outplay each other. There can be a bit of AP. But every time this game's come out, we've at least played a best of 5, if not playing 10 or 20 games in a row. I think this is just one of those games where it requires focus. You need to pay attention. It's a real game. There is strategy. There is tactics. There is planning ahead and trying to outplay your opponents. But I can play this while having a conversation and enjoying a drink or having a coffee. And I do love how small this version is. The mini version fits on your small coffee table, and you can still have your coffee and maybe your scone, and your partner can have their cappuccino and their croissant, and it'll all fit on the table, which I do appreciate that for the small size.
Yeah, to have an idea of the sizing, even though I said you don't want to play it on a train, you can think that little fold-down table, it more than easily fits on there with room to the side. It is super quick. Even between two evenly matched opponents who know the game, you can't really draw it out for too long. You're going to I can, compared to say Zensu, I find that you can really drag that one out when you get two people that are just in this sort of stalemate. This hasn't hit a stalemate for me.
And if you are a fan of games like this, you're going to like, if you like games like Quarto or Corridor, or Pylos or Kixo, this is, again, a part of that Gigamic series of games, and you will more than certainly like this one as well.
Yeah, if you like abstract 2-player games, this is that. It's one of the better ones out there. If you like having light filler games and time wasters available on game night, it's good for that as well. This is something I plan to include, especially with how small it is, to our public play game nights, just for when pairs are waiting for other games to finish, or there's someone who's nervous first time there and they're just looking for something 2-player to play. I think it's gonna be a great one because you can teach it in seconds, not even minutes.
And it's the ideal brewery game, like the simplicity of the rules, the speed at which it plays, and the accidents happen, spill-friendly components.
Yeah, board games that are easy to clean could be an interesting topic we could cover in the future, but you're right.
It's okay if it gets sticky.
It's also one game that's just not threatening. Some games, when you set them up, even some abstract games can look threatening with the number of pieces and things and just stuff. This one isn't that.
Plus, if you dig good-looking all-wood games, if that's a thing, and I know it is, and like to have something classy to decorate your gaming space or maybe even your non-gaming spaces, that it's also a game you can play, you should consider picking it up. And check out, as Sean said, Gigamic's other games. That's kind of their thing.
So that's it for our review of Qawale Mini. Having this travel-sized game around is making me want to plan another trip. I mean, we haven't tested it out camping yet, and I'm pretty sure it'd be great for at the cabin. Where would you take this game?
Well, that was the double bell.
Those dings mean our shift's coming to an end, and it's time to lock the lobby doors.
But before we start locking things down, let's take a moment to thank a selection of our Tabletop Bellhop Patreon patrons.
So first up, I want to welcome our newest Tabletop Bellhop Patreon patron, David Hutchinson, better known by the folk in our lobby as Charlie Brown Windsor.
Thank you to Dukas.
Thank you, Roger Malash, if you're still there in the chat room.
Diane Tuzano. Thanks, Mom.
Pat and Tori Domey. Hope to see you guys again in person sometime soon. Thank you for supporting the show.
Jeff and Sheila Seuss, we're probably going to see you tomorrow. Well, your first stop to finding us should be at the tabletopbellhop.com, but you can find us all over the web as Tabletop Bellhop, one word, and on your podcatcher of choice as the Tabletop Bellhop Gaming Podcast.
Note that's tabletopbellhop.com. I don't know where you'll go if you go to the tabletopbellhop.com. That could be bad. That might be one we want to register just in case. Now, our goal as the Tabletop Bellhop is to be the Dear Abby for gamers. That's what we want to be. And to that end, if you have a game or game night question for us, you can get it to me by emailing questions@tabletopbellhop.com or head to our webpage and click on Ask the Bellhop. Or as this episode pointed out, you could also hit us up on social media.
Thank you so much for joining us for this episode. If you like what you heard, we'd love it if you'd post a review on iTunes or Spotify. And while you're there, you can subscribe to get notified of upcoming episodes.
That's all for us tonight.
For the Tabletop Bellhop Gaming Podcast, I'm Sean.
I'm Deanna.
I'm Mo.
Thank you.
And